I had an interesting experience when I was trying to get rid of my ego self. And it was that I had to, well, first of all, I want to tell you, I was a seamstress. I created my own clothes. I was, in high school, I was just on top of my game. I came into this lifetime with a lot of talents that I accrued from other lifetimes. So here I was making my own clothes. I just didn't make my own clothes. I made French designed clothes when I was a senior in high school, which impressed my sewing teacher because she just was awed by all my talent and ability. And I thought I was really something special, very, very special. And I just designed clothes for my friends, and I did little things, and I thought maybe someday I'm going to design school and become a fashion designer in New York City. And this is who I was. This is who my identity was, this fashion designer. And then I got married. And what happened to that? I kind of dropped that aside, and I became very mother consciousness. I became the mother, and I had 4 children, and I put my desires aside, but I used my talents as sewing talents to make beautiful clothes for myself and for my family and my husband, and I was a very busy lady. You can imagine, with 4 daughters and a husband and myself, man, I was sewing every single day, and I loved it. I loved sewing. It was who I was. This is, people would come and want to see what I was created to wear, and I saw I had to make a new outfit every single week before I went to church because I wanted everybody to see my beautiful outfit. And that's who I was. That was Jane. And I owned that. And as I began to learn to meditate, and I kind of went back and I sat and meditated after, now, I had already seen my first past life. So the past life, first of all, smashed my ego. Because then I realized that I had other lifetimes, and who was I in these other lifetimes? Did I have an ego in that lifetime? See, these are all questions I was beginning to ask. And so I'm sitting there and saying, well, how do I get rid of my ego? What do I need to do? And it was, stop sewing. My talents and my abilities, this was so loud. I knew I was hearing something very, very clear. And it was stop sewing. I did not know what to do with myself. I felt like I had lost my best friend. I was grieving. I thought, oh my God, this can't be right. God gave me this beautiful, wonderful ability, and I'm not using it, and you know that's not right. And I was talking to myself. Who was talking to me? My ego was talking to me, saying, oh, couldn't be right. Oh, I didn't really hear that. But there was a part of me that had to step back and look at that. I had already developed the observer self that I'm helping that you all tap into and make it stronger. I had that part of me kind of clear. Not all the time, but more than before. So what happened was I decided I'm going to try this. So I set my sewing aside. And it was like, give away all your fabrics. Now I want to tell you, I had fabrics up the kazoo. I had more fabrics. And I thought I would absolutely die to have to give away my beautiful fabrics that I got at bargain prices, and it was so important. So I did it. I packed it up, I took it to the Salvation Army, and gave every single piece of fabric that I owned, every pattern, every zipper, every button. Now that was drastic. But I wanted to say, I want you more, God, than anything else in my life. And I'm going to prove it to you because I'm going to give up my greatest treasure, my greatest thing. And so I did. And then, what was I to do all day? That was my life. How was I going to go through my life when all I did was sew, and I had this wonderful creative mind that was doing all this stuff? And it was like, spend the time meditating that you spent sewing, Jane. well, you know what? I didn't have anything else to do. So I thought, you know what? This is pretty good. I'll do this. And I'd already started meditating, but I was only doing it in the morning before the children getting up. And I began to much more seriously do my meditations instead of being so busy. So busy, busy, busy. And what happened was that as I gave up that person, I destroyed who I thought I was. I destroyed that part of me that thought that that's who all of that I was. And the wonderful, wonderful, joyous thing that happened was I could set it aside and walk and look at it and be detached from it. And it didn't own me anymore because it owned me. I didn't know how much it owned me. And it was who I was and how I lived my life ever since I was little. And everything was gone. But what I was going into was I was beginning to move into a new phase of spiritual growth. A new idea of, if I'm not this, what am I? What am I? How do I connect with this other thing that I am? Because I don't know what I am. So the spiritual thermometer started out of my creative mind. Now, what happened when I gave up my sewing abilities and let that all go? God in me started to use my creativity in a new way. It didn't get shut down. It got just shut down from doing that. So now I'm open to use my creativity to do other things, like figure out things, create wonderful things to help me spiritually to move forward. You see, that's how the spiritual tools came about. That's how the 7 steps came about. They all came from my creative mind that was no longer creating dresses, but was creating ideas, divine ideas on my journey. So the thing that I thought I lost that was so precious to me, and I finally let go of, brought me into a whole new idea of who I was. And as I started moving into this new space of being, and I want to say space of being, it started making it possible for me to start looking at my ego self and what else was it attached to? What else? Was it the children? Well, of course it was the children. I was so attached to my children. They were everything. They were the most important thing besides my sewing and myself that was in my world. And I thought, okay, I've got to detach myself from making these children the way I want them to be. That was my ego. They need to be smart, they need to be perfect, they need to do this, they need to do that. I had all kinds of stuff. I had them in a box like this. I had 4 daughters, and they were all in a very, very tight box. And that's who they were, and I was their mother. And I thought, oh my God, now I've got another big step to let go of. And so, away goes the mother idea of who the mother was and how those children needed to be raised. By now, I had started to understand that they were souls in evolution. So I had to start looking at them differently. And I started to be able to detach myself from being the mother to being the spiritual mother that is much more able to see their needs than the mother that I was in the box and put them there. I had to take my kids out of the box and help them develop and give them boundaries. Give them very important boundaries to live by, not things that Jane needed them to do, but they needed to do to support their soul. So letting go of that part of my ego was a very important part of moving myself again forward.